Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of English in Advance. I'm Jessica, your host for today. Before we dive into the heart of our discussion, let me ask you a couple of questions to get you thinking. Have you ever been in a situation where you're listening to a conversation in English, perhaps with native speakers, and you feel like you're only catching bits and pieces? Maybe the speed is too fast, the sentences are complex, or the accents are unfamiliar. On the other hand, have you ever sat down to write an email or a message and wished you could make it sound more natural, more conversational, almost as if you were speaking directly to the person? If you've nodded along to any of this, then you are in exactly the right place. Today's episode is dedicated to showing you how the simple act of listening to real-life stories can profoundly boost not just your listening comprehension, but your writing skills as well. Stories are a truly fantastic and engaging way to practice English because they immerse you in the language as it's actually used. They allow you to hear the natural expressions, the rich vocabulary, and the fluid sentence structures that you simply won't find neatly laid out in a textbook. By listening carefully to how people navigate real situations, the triumphs, the challenges, the mundane, and the extraordinary, you'll learn how to communicate more effectively, improve your understanding of nuance, and even begin to sound more like a native speaker when you put your thoughts into writing. In this episode, I'll be sharing a collection of personal stories from my own life. These aren't just random anecdotes. They are packed with practical, everyday language that you can immediately start using. You'll hear me describe moments of pure joy, periods of significant challenge, and even some of the unexpected, sometimes comical lessons I've learned along the way. By focusing on these tangible, real-life examples, you'll gain a much deeper understanding of how English is used in day-to-day situations, and crucially, how you can apply this knowledge to both your listening practice and your own writing. So let's jump right in and start this journey together. Let's begin with one of the most common and often stressful situations that many of us experience. A moment when something entirely unexpected happens and you're forced to think on your feet. It could be a surprise phone call from a friend you haven't spoken to in years, an urgent, last-minute request from your boss at work, or even something as simple as realizing you've forgotten something critically important just as you're about to walk out the door. Have you ever found yourself in one of those situations where you had to respond quickly and you had to do it in English? Perhaps you had to grasp for phrases or vocabulary you weren't entirely sure about, feeling that pressure to sound competent and clear. Well, let me tell you about one such moment from my own life that I remember quite vividly. I recall one particularly hectic Tuesday morning. I was running late for an important client meeting, juggling my coffee, my laptop bag, and trying to mentally rehearse my opening lines. Just as I was about to head into the conference room, my phone buzzed with an unexpected message from my manager. He was asking for my immediate input on a completely separate project, a project I hadn't looked at in weeks, and he needed a response before my meeting started in about 5 minutes. In that split second, I had to figure out how to reply quickly and professionally without sounding flustered or dismissive. I wasn't sure what vocabulary would perfectly fit the tone I wanted to convey, but I ended up typing out something like, "Thanks for flagging this. I'll need a moment to review the details properly. Let me get through this meeting, and I'll get back to you on that as soon as I'm out." This situation really reinforced for me how much our language changes depending on the context. In moments of high pressure like this, you can't always rely on the formal, perfectly structured English you might learn from a grammar book. You need the kind of responsive, flexible English that you hear in real life. It's the kind of language that flows naturally and makes your communication sound smooth, fluent, and capable, even when you're feeling anything but. Now, let's take a moment to break down some of the language I used in that message, because the phrases are excellent examples of what you can use in similar high-pressure situations. The phrase, "I'll get back to you on that," is a wonderfully versatile expression. You might say this when you're asked something urgent but you don't have all the information at your fingertips. It clearly communicates that you will respond later, but it does so in a way that sounds confident and professional, not avoidant. It buys you time while maintaining your credibility. Another useful variation is, "Let me quickly check and get back to you," which is a slightly more casual way of saying you're going to find the information and respond shortly. These phrases are incredibly common in both professional work environments and personal situations, making them absolutely essential for both your listening comprehension and your writing toolkit. Now, and think for a moment about how you could use these phrases in your own life. Maybe you've been in a situation where you had to send a quick email to a colleague or respond to a text from a friend during a ridiculously busy moment. How did you phrase your thoughts? Could you have used more natural-sounding, efficient language like the expressions I just mentioned? Actively listening to these kinds of real-life moments in podcasts, movies, or conversations helps you prepare for when you inevitably find yourself in similar situations. Over time, as you hear more and more examples of this kind of communication, it becomes almost second nature for you to incorporate it into your own conversations and writing, making you sound more fluent and feel more confident. Let's take another example from my life, this time revolving around handling a small but potentially awkward problem. A few months ago, I was doing my weekly shopping at the grocery store, and as I was reviewing my receipt after paying, I noticed a mistake. The price for a bag of apples was significantly higher than the price that was displayed on the shelf. I approached the customer service desk, and when the clerk was free, I said, "Excuse me, I think there might have been a small mistake with this item. Would it be possible for you to double-check the price for me?" This simple interaction utilized language that was intentionally polite, yet also clear and direct. It didn't create a confrontation. It invited collaboration to solve a problem. Now let's pause for a moment and really think about that phrasing. If you listen closely to the way I structured my question, you'll notice that it's not just about using the correct vocabulary. It's about how those words fit together within the social context of the conversation, how they sound natural, and how they help to de-escalate a potentially stressful situation. In a moment of tension, like questioning a price, it's very easy to feel nervous or to come across as accusatory. But when you use language that you've heard and mentally practiced before, it comes out smoothly and confidently. In this case, I also used a very helpful phrase. Would it be possible for you to double-check? Oh, this is an incredibly polite way to ask someone to verify something without sounding demanding or entitled. It's one of those wonderfully functional phrases you'll hear often in customer service interactions, whether you're talking to people in stores, cafes, or even over the phone when you're making inquiries. It's a fantastic example of functional English, the kind of language that is genuinely useful in everyday conversations, but isn't always highlighted in traditional textbooks. If you pay close attention to these types of exchanges in your daily life or in media, you'll start to notice that the language used in them is very different from the formal academic English you might learn in a classroom. It's often more relaxed, more conversational, and it accurately reflects how people naturally communicate in the real world. This is precisely the kind of English you'll be listening to in this episode, and it's the kind of language that can absolutely transform your writing as well. Let's focus on that connection to writing for a moment. Many English learners find it challenging to write naturally, especially when it comes to everyday tasks like composing emails, making written requests, or explaining something clearly and concisely. After consistently listening to real-life conversations and stories, you'll begin to notice a significant shift in how you approach your writing. Let's take the example of the grocery store situation. If I were to write an email to the store's customer service department about the receipt issue, I might phrase it something like this: Dear Store Name Customer Service, I hope this email finds you well. I recently made a purchase at your store, and upon reviewing my receipt, I noticed that the price of one of the items I bought appears to be higher than what was advertised. Could you kindly verify the correct price for me? I have attached a copy of my receipt for your convenience. Notice how this email follows the same logical and emotional structure as the conversation I had in person. It's still polite, clear, and direct, but this time it's been adapted to a written context. By practicing your listening with real-life conversations, you start to internalize the natural flow of language, making it much easier to transfer those patterns from speech to writing. This is the incredible power of listening to real-life stories. They give you the tools to not only understand everyday English on a deeper level, but also to use that understanding to dramatically improve how you write. If you're able to listen to someone speak naturally and then replicate that style, that rhythm, and that tone in your writing, you'll find that your writing sounds more authentic, more engaging, and far less stiff or formal. Have you ever consciously noticed how the way I speak and write changes based on the context of the situation and the audience I'm addressing? It's the same with the way all native speakers communicate. When you listen to them talk in various settings, you are subconsciously absorbing these subtle but critical changes in language use. It's the little things, like knowing when to use "could you please" versus a more direct "can you," or understanding how to phrase a request politely to a stranger versus a close friend, that make your English sound more like a native speaker's. These are exactly the types of nuanced skills that are developed through extensive listening to real-life stories. Let me give you one more quick example to illustrate this. Just last week, I was talking to a friend, Maria, who was telling me about an unexpected experience she had during a recent trip to Italy. She got hopelessly lost in the winding streets of Venice and had to ask for directions. She said, "I was completely and utterly lost, so I just walked up to a stranger on the street and asked, 'Excuse me, I'm so sorry to bother you, but could you possibly help me find my way to the train station?'" This simple sentence is something you might easily use in a similar situation. You'll notice that it's incredibly polite and uses clear, easily understandable language. It's not about using fancy, complex vocabulary. It's about effectively getting your message across in a way that sounds natural and respectful. The real beauty of listening to real-life stories is that they help you practice and internalize this kind of essential, everyday language. When you hear a phrase like, "Could you possibly help me find my way in a story?" you begin to recognize its pattern and its function. Then, after hearing it a few times, it becomes a part of your active vocabulary. Over time, you start to speak and write with much more ease and confidence, knowing that you have a rich mental bank of natural-sounding phrases to draw from for any situation. And that, fundamentally, is the goal of today's episode, to get you so comfortable with the kind of English you'll use in real-life situations that it becomes second nature. When you start thinking in these terms, both your listening and your writing skills will improve dramatically. Let's explore another fascinating area where real-life stories can really help you understand the intricate workings of English in natural conversations, handling unexpected emotions. We've all been in situations where we feel nervous, ecstatic, or even deeply frustrated, and how we express these emotions can completely change the language we choose to use. Have you ever noticed how people adjust their language when they're feeling stressed, excited, or confused? It's not just about using the right words for the emotion, but also about the tone of voice, the pacing of their speech, and the specific idiomatic expressions that accompany it. These are all subtle, yet crucial elements that you'll pick up by listening to real-life stories, and they are exactly what you need to sound more fluent and natural in your own English. Let me share a personal experience with you that illustrates this point. A few months ago, I was faced with an incredibly stressful situation at work. It was the end of a long day, and I was just about to head out for an important dinner meeting with a potential client when I discovered that the detailed proposal I had spent the entire week preparing was completely missing from my laptop. I felt my heart race and a wave of panic wash over me. I had worked so hard on it, and I suddenly realized I was missing the most critical part of the meeting. In that moment, I had to control my panic and still communicate clearly to my team to find a solution. I immediately called my colleague, David, and said, "David, I'm in a bit of a panic right now. I can't seem to find the final proposal anywhere on my computer. Can you help me figure this out quickly? I'm supposed to leave in 10 minutes." If you listen closely to what I said, you'll notice that while I'm expressing a sense of panic and urgency, I'm doing it in a way that still conveys the message calmly and focuses on a solution. The phrase, "I'm in a bit of a panic right now," is a perfect way to signal stress without being overly dramatic or alarming. It's a controlled expression that tells the listener, "I'm worried, but I'm still able to focus on fixing this." Similarly, "Can you help me figure this out quickly?" is a clear and direct request that doesn't sound demanding or aggressive. It's a polite and collaborative way of asking for urgent help in a stressful situation. If you were in a similar predicament, you could use these very phrases to express how you're feeling while still keeping the conversation productive and forward-moving. Understanding how to artfully balance the expression of your emotions with the language you use is a key part of effective communication, and it's a skill you can consciously develop by listening to how people navigate these situations in real life. In situations where emotions are running high, whether it's stress from a deadline, excitement about good news, or frustration with a service, native English speakers often use specific phrases to manage the conversation, helping them keep it calm and clear. Think about how people tend to say things like, "I'm feeling a little stressed out at the moment," or, "To be honest, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed," when they need to communicate that they're struggling with a difficult task. These phrases don't just communicate the problem, they also reveal the emotional state of the speaker in a way that invites empathy rather than alarm. By hearing these kinds of phrases used in the context of real-life conversations, you'll start to internalize them, making it so much easier to express yourself authentically and effectively when you find yourself in similar situations. Now, let's switch gears slightly and talk about another incredibly important aspect of advanced language learning: the ability to adapt and switch between different registers of language. Sometimes when we're speaking English, we need to adjust the way we talk depending on who we're speaking to and the context of the situation. For example, the way you talk to your closest friends over coffee will be vastly different from how you speak to your boss during a formal performance review, right? In real-life conversations, English speakers are constantly and often unconsciously switching between formal and informal language, and it can be tricky for learners to know when and how to use each one appropriately. But don't worry. This is yet another area where listening to a wide variety of real-life stories can be a massive help. Let me explain with an example. The other day, I had a conversation with a good friend about a new restaurant that had just opened in our town. I said to her, "Oh my gosh, you've got to check this place out. The food is absolutely amazing, and the whole atmosphere is just so relaxed and cool. You'll love it. Okomatsu." Now, notice the tone and the choice of words here. This is a casual, enthusiastic conversation, so I'm using relaxed, informal language. Phrases like, "You've got to check this place out," and descriptions like, "so relaxed and cool," are typical of the kind of language you'd use when talking to a friend, someone you're completely comfortable with. But just the day before, I had to talk to a potential business partner about that very same restaurant, as we were considering it for a corporate event. In that context, I said, "I would highly recommend this particular restaurant to you. The quality of the food is truly exceptional, and the ambiance creates a very inviting and professional atmosphere suitable for clients." Do you hear the difference? The tone and the word choices have changed dramatically. "I'd highly recommend" is much more formal than "you've got to check this out." Exceptional is a more professional and sophisticated way of saying amazing, and ambiance is a more formal word for atmosphere. These subtle but significant changes in language are crucial for effective communication, and you'll pick them up naturally by listening to conversations in many different settings. Over time, you'll learn how to seamlessly switch between these different styles of language, which is an incredibly important skill to have, especially when you're writing professional emails, making important phone calls, or participating in business meetings. But there's something even more interesting and powerful happening here. By listening to stories where people switch between different registers, you'll also begin to develop a deeper, more intuitive understanding of how context plays a massive role in how language is used. For example, in a formal business meeting, you might hear someone say, "We would like to discuss potential collaborations for the upcoming fiscal year," which sounds very professional and planned. But in a casual conversation with a colleague you're friendly with, you might hear the exact same idea expressed as, "Hey, we should totally team up on something next year." Both sentences convey the same general meaning, but the level of formality is worlds apart. When you listen to these shifts in tone, vocabulary, and formality in real-life stories, it becomes much easier to understand how to make those shifts yourself. Whether you're talking to a senior colleague, a new friend, or a stranger on the street, knowing how to adjust your language appropriately is a key part of sounding confident, competent, and fluent in English. Another area where real-life stories can be incredibly beneficial is in helping you express your opinions clearly, confidently, and respectfully. Have you ever found it hard to articulate your thoughts in English, especially when you're discussing something you're passionate about? Whether it's a political issue, a new technological trend, or a personal belief, expressing opinions in a second language can be a daunting task. But when you listen to native speakers share their opinions, you get to hear exactly how they structure their thoughts, how they introduce their viewpoints, and just as importantly, how they respond when others disagree with them. Take this situation from my own life as an example. I was recently discussing a new, very popular movie with a friend who had a completely different opinion of it than I did. I said, I totally get why you feel that way and I can see the appeal of the main character. But personally, I think the movie's pacing was a bit slow in the middle. I just found myself losing focus and couldn't stay engaged with some parts. Notice how I started my response. I began by acknowledging my friend's point of view. I totally get why you feel that way. This is a polite, empathetic, and respectful way to acknowledge someone's opinion, which is so important in any healthy discussion. It shows you're listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak. Then, I introduced my own contrasting opinion by using the phrase, "Personally, I think." This is a great phrase to use when sharing your own thoughts, as it clearly signals that you're speaking from your own perspective, not stating a universal fact. And finally, I explained my reasoning. The movie's pacing was a bit slow. This is how you support your opinion with clear, understandable points, making your argument more persuasive. By listening to these types of exchanges in real-life stories, you'll start to notice the common language patterns used to express opinions. Whether you're agreeing, disagreeing, or offering a completely different perspective, there's a certain way to do it that sounds both natural and confident. Over time, as you listen to more of these nuanced conversations, you'll start using these phrases in your own discussions, making your spoken and written English sound more polished, articulate, and confident. So as we've seen throughout this first part of our episode, real-life stories are incredibly powerful tools for improving your English. They expose you to the kind of authentic language used in everyday situations, helping you understand how to express yourself more naturally and confidently. From dealing with unexpected emotions to switching between different registers of language and expressing your opinions thoughtfully, the real-life examples I've shared are just a small glimpse of the kinds of situations you'll encounter as you continue to improve your listening and writing skills. The more you listen to these stories, the more you'll absorb the natural rhythm, intonation, and flow of English, making it infinitely easier to communicate effectively in a wide range of settings. Understanding English through real-life stories is like immersing yourself in the very heart of the language. The profound beauty of this approach lies in how effortlessly you begin to absorb not just new vocabulary and grammar rules, but also the subtle nuances of tone, cultural expression, and social context. When you hear how real people navigate real situations, you start to pick up on linguistic patterns and idiomatic expressions that textbooks and formal lessons often miss entirely. This is where storytelling evolves into a tool not just for learning, but for fundamentally transforming how you approach and interact with the English language. Let's dive deeper into a few more real-life scenarios that can significantly enhance your comprehension and your own expressive skills. Think about the challenge of navigating a social event, like a party or a networking function, where you don't know many people. The language used in these situations is often a delicate mix of small talk, polite inquiries, and casual, lighthearted banter. When I first moved to a new city, I attended a large networking event where I literally didn't know a single soul. It was a little daunting at first, I must admit, but it turned out to be an incredible opportunity to practice my conversational English in a completely natural, low-stakes setting. I spotted someone standing alone, took a deep breath, and introduced myself. I said, "Hi, I'm Jessica. I just moved to the city and thought this event would be a great way to meet some new people. How about you? What brings you here tonight?" Notice how this simple introduction actually covers a lot of ground. First, it gives a small, relatable piece of personal information. "I just moved here," which serves as an invitation for the other person to respond with something similar. Then, the open-ended question, "What brings you here tonight?" effectively opens the door to a conversation and encourages the other person to share their own story. These are the kinds of conversational starters you'll hear frequently in real-life interactions. And the more you listen to them, the more natural and automatic they'll feel when you use them yourself. As the evening progressed, I found myself having to adapt my language depending on who I was talking to. For example, when I spoke to someone who was clearly older and more experienced in their career, I kept my language a bit more formal and respectful. I said something like, "It's fascinating to hear about your work in the tech industry. How long have you been involved in this field?" But later, when I spoke to someone closer to my own age, my tone became much more relaxed and informal. I said, "Wow, that's so cool that you work in tech. What kind of stuff do you work on?" Both sentences serve the exact same purpose, showing genuine interest in the other person's career, but the level of formality changes dramatically based on the social context. This kind of linguistic flexibility is absolutely essential for sounding natural and building rapport in English. Listening to how native speakers effortlessly adjust their language in different situations will help you develop the instinct and the confidence to do the same. Now let's talk about a situation where storytelling itself becomes the primary focus. Sharing personal anecdotes is one of the most powerful and engaging ways to connect with other people. And it's also a fantastic way to practice your English in a creative way. When you share a story, you're not just dryly reciting a sequence of events. You're bringing those events to life with descriptive details, emotional color, and even snippets of dialogue. For example, one of my favorite stories to share is about a time I completely and utterly embarrassed myself in a coffee shop. It was a rainy Saturday morning, and I had decided to treat myself to a fancy, complicated coffee. I walked into this very trendy, minimalist cafe, glanced at the overwhelming menu, and confidently ordered what I thought was a sophisticated and delicious drink. "I'll have a caramel macchiato, extra foam with almond milk, please." The barista gave me a slightly strange look but didn't say anything. A few minutes later, he handed me my drink and I took a big, expectant sip, only to realize it tasted nothing like what I'd expected. It was bitter and strange. I had accidentally ordered the wrong drink entirely. Embarrassed but also amused, I laughed and said to the barista, "Well, I guess I'm trying something new today." When I share this story, I use phrases like, "I decided to treat myself," and "I guess I'm trying something new today," which are very common and relatable expressions in everyday English. These kinds of conversational phrases make the story feel more personal and engaging. By listening to stories like this, you'll learn how to use these conversational lubricants that bring your own stories to life, making them more vivid, memorable, and enjoyable for your listeners. Another incredibly important skill that you can develop through listening to real-life stories is understanding how to handle misunderstandings or awkward moments in conversations. These situations happen to absolutely everyone, and knowing how to navigate them gracefully and without panic is a valuable social skill. For instance, I once had a moment in a work meeting where I completely misunderstood a colleague's question. They asked, "So what's your take on the current strategy?" But for some reason, I thought they were asking me for a detailed, step-by-step explanation of the strategy itself. I launched into a long explanation of the various steps of the strategy, only to realize midway through, from the confused looks on their faces, that I had misunderstood. I paused, took a breath, and said, "Oh, I see what you mean now. You're asking for my opinion on it, not a summary. My apologies. I think the strategy has a lot of potential, but it might need some adjustments in certain areas. What's important here is how I handled the misunderstanding. Instead of panicking or getting flustered, I acknowledged the mistake. Oh, I see what you mean now," and then corrected my course. This kind of recovery language is incredibly useful in both professional and social settings. Listening to stories where people navigate similar situations will give you the verbal tools and the confidence you need to handle misunderstandings with poise and clarity. Let's shift to another highly practical scenario, giving directions or instructions. Imagine you're trying to help a tourist who is lost in your city. This is a situation where absolute clarity is key, and the language you use needs to be simple, direct, and unambiguous. A few weeks ago, I was walking through a local park when someone stopped me and asked, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the main library?" I smiled and said, "Of course. Just keep walking straight down this path until you see the big fountain. The library is right behind it. You can't miss it." Notice how the directions are crystal clear and easy to follow. Phrases like, "Just keep walking straight," "The library is right behind it," leave very little room for confusion. The classic ending, "You can't miss it," is a friendly and reassuring way to conclude the directions. Listening to stories where people give directions or explain how to do something will help you learn how to simplify your language and make it more accessible, which is a valuable skill in almost any situation you can imagine. Finally, for this section, let's talk about the delicate art of handling feedback or criticism. This is a situation where language plays a massive role in how the message is delivered and received. I vividly remember a time in college when I received some tough but fair feedback from a professor on an essay. He said, "Jessica, your central argument is strong, but the overall organization of your essay needs improvement." try to structure your points more clearly so that your ideas flow in a more logical progression. While it wasn't easy to hear at the time, the feedback was incredibly constructive and gave me specific, actionable steps to improve. When giving feedback, notice how phrases like "your argument is strong" and "needs improvement" are used to balance positive comments with critical ones. This is a common and effective technique. Listening to how people give and receive feedback in real-life stories, whether in a professional, academic, or personal context, will teach you how to approach these sensitive situations diplomatically, making you a much more effective and empathetic communicator. By diving deep into these kinds of real-life stories, you're not just learning English, you're learning how to use it effectively in the situations that matter most. Whether it's making small talk, telling a compelling story, handling a misunderstanding, or giving constructive feedback, these stories offer a rich window into how English works in the real world. The more you listen, the more you'll pick up on the natural rhythms, patterns, and nuances of natural speech, helping you to sound more fluent and feel more confident in any context. As you continue to engage with these real-life stories, you'll begin to notice recurring patterns in how native speakers structure their thoughts and express themselves. The key to achieving genuine fluency isn't just about memorizing endless lists of vocabulary and complex grammar rules, but about developing a deep, intuitive sense of how the language works in practice. Real-life stories offer a fantastic and enjoyable way to cultivate this intuition, as they present language in dynamic action, where you can see and hear how words, tone, and even body language come together to create rich layers of meaning. For example, when you listen to someone share a deeply personal experience, you start to observe how they use intonation and pauses to emphasize certain parts of the story, guiding the listener's emotional response. Imagine you're hearing a friend recount a harrowing time when they lost their wallet while traveling abroad. The way they tell the story might go something like this. "So I had just gotten off the bus in this tiny village when I reached into my pocket and realized my wallet was gone. I searched everywhere, my bag, my pockets again, but I just couldn't remember the last time I'd actually seen it." The deliberate pauses and the rising emphasis on "my wallet was gone" effectively convey the rising panic and urgency of the situation. This is an essential aspect of spoken language that you simply won't find explained in a textbook, but once you start paying attention to these subtleties, it'll become much easier for you to replicate them in your own speech, making you a more compelling storyteller. Listening to real-life stories like this also helps you understand the specific context in which certain phrases or expressions are most effectively used. For instance, in a situation where someone is recounting a personal loss or a significant disappointment, they might say, "That was honestly one of the worst days of my life." This phrase, while simple on the surface, carries a deep emotional weight and is used in a context that immediately conveys the gravity of the situation to the listener. It's not just the words themselves that matter, but how and when they are used. As you continue to listen to a variety of stories, you'll notice similar phrases used to express a whole spectrum of different emotions, whether it's frustration, pure joy, or utter surprise. Another fascinating aspect of real-life stories is how they often include unexpected twists or challenges. These unexpected elements are an important part of communication because they perfectly mimic the unpredictability of everyday life. Take, for example, a story about a spontaneous road trip. A person might start by saying, "It was supposed to be a quick trip, just a couple of hours to the beach for the afternoon." But then they'll describe how things went completely off course. "But then we ended up taking a wrong exit off the highway and found ourselves in the middle of nowhere with the GPS not working." Here, the twist, the wrong exit, adds a layer of surprise and often humor to the story. This type of storytelling frequently incorporates a lesson learned or a funny outcome, and it's something you'll encounter regularly in casual conversations. Listening to how these twists are introduced and narrated can help you sound more natural and engaging when you're telling your own stories. In the workplace, storytelling can also be an incredibly powerful tool for building professional relationships and creating meaningful connections. For instance, imagine you're attending a team meeting and a senior manager shares a story about a particularly challenging project they worked on early in their career. They might say, "It was a massive project, and at first, I honestly didn't think we'd be able to pull it off. But our team worked together. We stayed focused through some really late nights, and in the end, we not only met, but exceeded our clients' expectations." Notice how this story subtly highlights valuable professional qualities like resilience, teamwork, and determination. By listening to these kinds of professional anecdotes, you can learn not only how to narrate your own experiences effectively, but also how to tailor your language to specific contexts, like a formal business environment. One of the most valuable skills you can develop through listening to real-life stories is understanding how people navigate different and sometimes awkward social situations. Consider a scenario where you're attending a dinner party and the host asks you, "So, what do you think of the food?" In response, a native speaker might say something tactful like, "Honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect with the combination of spices, but I'm so pleasantly surprised. The flavors are absolutely amazing." The key here is to notice how the speaker keeps their answer polite and overwhelmingly positive, even if they had some initial hesitation. This kind of conversational skill is essential in social interactions, where you may need to express opinions tactfully, especially when dealing with potentially sensitive topics like food, fashion, or personal tastes. Real-life stories are also a fantastic way to learn how to ask thoughtful questions and keep a conversation flowing naturally and engagingly. For example, imagine you're listening to someone talk about their recent travels. After they mention the places they visited, you could ask something specific like, "What was your absolute favorite part of the trip, and why?" Or, "How did you manage to navigate the language barrier in the more rural areas?" These kinds of follow-up questions show that you're actively engaged and genuinely interested in the conversation, while also keeping the flow going smoothly. The more you listen to stories and the ensuing conversations, the more you'll develop an instinct for asking the right questions at the right time, which is a crucial skill for achieving any level of fluency. Additionally, real-life stories offer a rich and varied source of idiomatic expressions and colloquial language. Take, for example, a story about a time someone had a terrible experience with a customer service department. "I don't know what happened, but the whole experience was a complete disaster. The representative was incredibly rude, and the food took forever to arrive." The phrase, "the whole experience was a disaster," is an idiomatic way of expressing deep frustration, and "took forever" is a classic colloquial expression that makes the story feel more genuine and relatable. These expressions are often incredibly hard to learn from textbooks, but when you hear them used naturally in context, you begin to internalize them, making it much easier to use them correctly in your own conversations. Moreover, listening to real-life stories allows you to understand how a wide range of emotions are conveyed through language. Whether it's unbridled excitement, profound sadness, or intense frustration, you can hear how native speakers subtly adjust their language to match their emotions. For instance, a person sharing good news might say, "I couldn't believe it. I had been waiting for this opportunity for years, and finally it was happening." The excitement is palpable through the words, "I couldn't believe it," and finally it was happening. Understanding how emotions influence language use will help you sound much more natural and authentic when expressing your own feelings in English, whether you're in a casual chat with a friend or a more formal setting. In conversations, there are also moments of silence, meaningful pauses, and moments of reflection that are crucial to understanding the full flow and emotional weight of a story. Imagine you're listening to someone recount a difficult experience from their past. "It was a really tough time for me. I had just lost my job and everything seemed so uncertain." Notice how the pause after "it was" builds a small amount of suspense and invites the listener to pay closer attention. These pauses help to convey the weight of the moment and allow the speaker to gather their thoughts. Recognizing these pauses and their function in real-life stories will help you understand the emotional pacing of a conversation and dramatically improve your listening comprehension. Another important aspect of real-life stories is how they often reflect different cultural norms and societal expectations. For example, when telling a story about a large family gathering, a person from a collectivist culture might include phrases like, "We're a very close-knit family, so of course we all pitch in when it's time to clean up after dinner." This not only shows the importance of family, but also reflects cultural values around cooperation and shared responsibilities. Listening to stories from different cultural contexts will significantly broaden your understanding of the language, allowing you to use it more effectively and sensitively in diverse cultural settings. Finally, storytelling offers a unique chance to practice your English comprehension and writing skills simultaneously. When you listen to a story, you're not just passively engaging with the spoken word, you're also learning how to organize your thoughts and present them coherently, which is the foundation of good writing. When you then go on to share your own stories, you're actively practicing those skills. As you become more familiar with the structure and flow of real-life narratives, you'll find that your writing skills improve as well, especially when it comes to structuring essays, composing engaging emails, and even writing creative pieces. This process is not just about learning words and phrases. It's about learning the fundamental rhythm and patterns of natural, everyday communication. Through listening to and analyzing real-life stories, you gain invaluable insight into how people use language in all its beautiful complexity, how they navigate emotions, social expectations, and real-world challenges. As you continue practicing and incorporating these lessons into your own speaking and writing, you'll notice your confidence in English soar. Whether you're having a casual conversation with friends, giving a presentation at work, or writing an important essay for class. Let's dive into some more of these real-life scenarios. and see how they can shape your English learning experience. We'll explore how people talk about their dream vacations, the immense challenges of moving to a new country, the annual ritual of setting goals for the new year, and gaining insights into complex systems like the U.S. education system, all through the lens of real-life stories and conversations. When you think about planning your dream vacation, there are so many exciting moments and conversations involved. Imagine talking to your friend about a trip you're hoping to take. You might say, "I've been dreaming of going to Japan for years. The culture, the food, the incredible landscapes, it just feels like it would be a dream come true." This phrase beautifully captures the deep excitement and anticipation that comes with planning a truly special vacation. In these conversations, you'll also hear people mention the practical logistics. "I need to figure out my travel dates and book flights soon." Or, "I've been looking into accommodations, and I think I want to stay in an Airbnb near the beach." These phrases highlight how planning a trip involves a delicate mix of daydreaming and practical, down-to-earth considerations. You might also hear someone express their budget concerns. "I really want to visit all the famous tourist spots, but I need to be careful with my spending." Notice how the balance between excitement and practical constraints is a key theme in planning a vacation. These kinds of conversations are filled with incredibly useful expressions like "I've been dreaming of," "I need to figure out," or "I want to visit." These phrases will help you sound like a fluent and natural speaker when you're talking about your own travel plans. Now let's talk about the profound challenges and transformative experiences of moving to a new country. Imagine someone who has just relocated to the U.S. sharing their experience with a new friend. They might say, "When I first moved here, I was completely overwhelmed. I had to learn everything from scratch. How to use the public transportation system, where to shop for familiar groceries, and even how to navigate the complicated healthcare system." You can hear the palpable sense of challenge and monumental change in their phrasing, especially when they say, "I was overwhelmed," or "I had to learn everything from scratch." The reality of moving to a new country is filled with such hurdles, and real-life stories help you understand those challenges through expressions like, "I'm still getting used to," or "It's been difficult, but I'm slowly adjusting." You might also hear someone reflect on the deeply emotional side of moving. "There were times during the first few months when I felt really homesick, but I've started to build a new support system here, which has made a huge difference." The phrase "feeling homesick" is incredibly common when talking about missing one's home country, and building a support system is often used when people talk about making new friends or finding community. Conversations like these offer invaluable insights into how to express complex emotions and experiences when adjusting to a new life in a new place. Next, let's explore the annual tradition of setting and discussing goals for the new year. Imagine talking to a friend about your New Year's resolutions. "This year, I really want to focus on getting in shape and eating healthier. I've already started working out 3 times a week, and I feel great." In this conversation, the phrase "I want to focus on" clearly shows intention, and "I've already started" signals that the action has already begun. These kinds of phrases are used to share progress and motivation, which are often key parts of discussing New Year's resolutions. Someone else might share their resolution by saying, "I've decided to learn a new language this year. I know it's going to be challenging, but I'm committed to it. Here, the phrase "I've decided to" indicates a firm commitment, and "I'm committed to it" adds a powerful sense of determination and willpower. Discussing goals often leads to reflecting on past experiences like, "Last year, I didn't stick to my resolutions at all, but this year, I'm taking it much more seriously." This kind of reflection helps convey both personal growth and the inherent challenges that come with making and keeping resolutions. The way people talk about their resolutions gives you deep insights into how they express ambition, struggles, and hope for the future. Finally, let's look at a complex topic like the U.S. education system and what it's like for students. If someone is talking about their experience at an American university, they might start with something like, "At first, I was shocked by how much freedom and independence students have here. Unlike in my home country, where the professors have more control over the class, here you're really expected to take the initiative and manage your own time well." Notice how the speaker contrasts their experience using phrases like, "At first I was shocked," and "unlike my home country." These phrases effectively show the differences between systems and express a sense of surprise or realization. Another student might say, "The workload is incredibly intense, but I've learned how to balance my studying with social activities. You just have to stay on top of things." This is a classic example of how students in American universities often discuss the crucial skills of time management and finding a healthy balance. You'll also hear about the social aspects. "I've met so many people from different countries, and we've started a study group. It's been really helpful." The phrase "I've met so many people" highlights the social connections that are so important in university life, and "started a study group" reflects the collaborative nature of American education. Through these conversations, you begin to see the cultural and educational differences, as well as the specific vocabulary and expressions used by students. You might hear someone share their frustration. "I don't know how people manage their time. It's so overwhelming sometimes," which shows the stress students often feel. Or they might express excitement about opportunities, saying, "The best part is all the opportunities you get to network with people in your field." These expressions help you understand both the academic and social life in American universities. By listening to real-life stories in these areas, whether it's about vacation plans, moving to a new country, setting New Year's resolutions, or navigating American universities, you're learning how to express emotions, goals, and challenges in real-time conversations. These expressions and phrases aren't just useful for building your vocabulary. They also help you sound more natural and confident in any conversation. Whether you're planning a trip, talking about life changes, or discussing your future goals, the more you listen to these types of stories and conversations, the more you'll internalize the rhythms of natural speech, helping you improve both your listening and your writing skills. You'll notice that over time, you'll begin to use these phrases and structures in your own life, making your English more fluent and authentic. And it's this kind of practical, real-world application of language that will take your English skills to the next level. Let's keep this conversation flowing and dive deeper into more fascinating real-life scenarios that will enhance your listening skills and give you an opportunity to absorb authentic English in various contexts. Let's explore the world of career changes and job opportunities. People often face monumental decisions when it comes to switching careers, and those decisions are filled with a complex mix of excitement, uncertainty, and sometimes even a little bit of regret. Imagine someone telling their personal story about changing careers. I was in my last job for 5 years, but I just couldn't see myself doing it forever. I wanted something more creative, something that didn't feel like I was just going through the motions. So I finally took the leap and started looking into graphic design. Yee. When people talk about major career changes, they often use evocative expressions like, I took the leap, or I just couldn't see myself doing it forever. These phrases powerfully capture both the inherent fear and the liberating excitement of making such a big life change. You might also hear people reflect on their past experiences, saying something like, I never thought I'd leave my old job, but once I started learning these new skills, I realized I could do something completely different and much more fulfilling. Conversations like this are filled with expressions about personal growth, difficult decision-making, and the profound lessons people learn along the way. For example, I've learned so much in these first few months in my new role, or I'm still adjusting to the different work culture, but it's been a great experience so far. These phrases show how people express their challenges and their triumphs when starting a brand new career. Now, let's switch gears and talk about health and fitness. Setting goals to live a healthier lifestyle is a topic that comes up in almost every casual conversation, especially around the beginning of a new year. People might start by saying, I've been trying to improve my health recently, so I've started eating more vegetables and cutting back on sugar. These conversations are full of useful, everyday language for talking about habits and routines. You might also hear someone explain their fitness goals by saying, I'm aiming to run a 5K this summer, so I've been working out regularly. These kinds of discussions often include the word aiming, which helps to express a clear intention. People also use phrases like, I've been trying or I've started to show an ongoing effort or the beginning of a new habit. As people talk about their fitness routines, they may reflect on their past habits. Before, I never had the energy to work out, but now I feel so much better since I've changed my diet. This reflection is important because it shows how people assess their progress and motivate themselves to keep going. You'll also hear them talk about setbacks too. There were days when I felt really discouraged, but I didn't give up. These expressions help you build a richer vocabulary for discussing the very real challenges and the satisfying progress involved in personal health journeys. Next up, let's talk about entrepreneurship. Starting a new business is something that many people dream of doing, but it comes with its own unique set of formidable challenges. Imagine someone who has just started their own online business sharing their story. It wasn't easy at first. I had to learn everything on my own, how to set up a website, create marketing materials, and even manage customer service. You'll notice phrases like, it wasn't easy at first, or I had to learn everything on my own, which clearly show the struggle and the steep learning curve involved in starting a new venture. People also use phrases like, I'm so excited about the future of my business, to express their optimism and enthusiasm. As people discuss their entrepreneurial journeys, they often talk about the difficulties they face. I've had to deal with a lot of rejection, but I'm still going strong. Or they may discuss moments of exhilarating success, such as, "When I got my very first sale, it felt absolutely amazing. It made all the hard work worth it." These expressions give you a deep insight into the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship, with its dizzying highs and discouraging lows, and will help you improve your ability to listen to and understand stories about business ventures and personal development. Volunteering is another topic that often comes up in casual conversations. People who volunteer usually have powerful and moving stories about their experiences. "I've been volunteering at a local animal shelter for the past few months. It's been such a rewarding experience. It's truly amazing to see how small acts of kindness can really make a difference in these animals' lives." Here, the word rewarding is often used to describe something that gives a deep sense of personal fulfillment. People also share the challenges they face. "There are days when it's emotionally draining, but I keep going because I know I'm making a positive impact." Phrases like emotionally draining or making a positive impact show the deeper emotions tied to the act of volunteering. Someone else might say, "I've learned a lot about myself through volunteering. It's opened my eyes to a whole new world." This reflection helps people realize how giving back to the community can change their perspective and even help them develop new skills. Through these kinds of conversations, you can hear the expressions people use to talk about their sense of responsibility, fulfillment, and the intrinsic value of helping others. Let's talk about family relationships and personal growth. Family conversations are incredibly rich with vocabulary related to emotions and significant life experiences. People often discuss the highs and lows of family life. "My relationship with my parents has always been a bit complicated, but lately I've been trying to be more patient and understanding with them." In family conversations, you hear a lot of reflective phrases like, "I've been trying," or "I'm learning to." These phrases show a commitment to growth and self-awareness. You might also hear someone say, "I've learned so much from my kids. They've taught me to appreciate the small things in life." Family discussions often bring out deep emotions and personal insights with phrases like "complicated relationship" or "I'm learning to be more patient." People may also talk about family milestones. "My sister just got married and it's been a huge emotional moment for all of us." When people talk about significant moments in their families' lives, they often use expressions like "a huge moment" or "it's been a game changer." These conversations provide excellent practice for listening to how people describe their connections with loved ones and their ongoing personal development. Technology is constantly evolving, and it's a topic that generates a lot of interesting and often passionate conversations. Imagine someone talking about their relationship with social media. "I used to check my phone constantly, but now I'm trying to be more mindful of how much time I spend on social media. I've set limits for myself." Here you hear expressions like "trying to be more mindful" and "set limits," which reflect the growing awareness of how technology affects our lives and our mental well-being. People also talk about the impact of technology on relationships. It's amazing how social media can bring people together, but at the same time, it can create distance between us. These types of reflections about the role of technology in our lives give you a chance to hear vocabulary related to personal boundaries, digital life, and how we interact with others in the modern world. People also share their frustrations, saying things like, "It feels like technology is taking over. I sometimes miss the days when we could just talk face to face without distractions." These kinds of discussions are useful because they give you insight into how technology affects our behavior and how we talk about managing our online presence. Let's continue with cultural differences and travel experiences, where people reflect on the challenges and joys of experiencing different cultures. I spent 6 months in Italy last year, and it completely changed my perspective on life. The pace of life is so much slower, and people really value family time. You'll hear phrases like, "completely changed my perspective," or "people really value," which show how travel experiences can deeply affect someone's view of the world. You might also hear someone share a story about a cultural misunderstanding. "I didn't realize that in some cultures being late is considered very disrespectful. I learned that the hard way when I missed an important meeting." These kinds of stories give you the chance to hear expressions about personal growth, learning from mistakes, and adapting to new environments. These topics allow you to practice listening to real-life stories in various contexts, helping you improve both your comprehension and your vocabulary. By hearing how people talk about their experiences, challenges, and goals in these situations, you'll naturally learn to incorporate these expressions into your own English skills. As we near the conclusion of our lengthy discussion today, I want to thank you for sticking with me on this deep dive into the power of real-life stories. I hope these varied examples and detailed breakdowns have illuminated just how valuable authentic listening is for your journey to English fluency. By immersing yourself in these narratives, from the stress of a missed deadline to the joy of starting a new life in a different country, you are doing more than just learning words. You are learning how to feel the language, how to understand its rhythm, its emotional core, and its cultural heartbeat. Remember that every conversation you overhear, every podcast you listen to, and every story a friend shares with you is a learning opportunity. The key is to listen actively, to notice the small turns of phrase, the emotional tone, and the conversational strategies people use. The more you listen, the more these patterns will become a natural part of your own speaking and writing. Thank you for tuning in to English in Advance. Until next time, take care and keep listening.